Hey there, so today we have another review, and this is Goose Island's Cooper Project, and this is their barrel-aged blonde Doppelbock. So first, shout out to my friend Kat, who is a beer writer, and just like me, I get beer sent sometimes, but she gets a lot more beer sent to her, so awesome for her, but she thankfully gave me this bottle, so thank you so much, Kat. And actually, I'm going to dig into a little bit of history and give you a little bit of basic beers about blonde Doppelbock or Helle Doppelbock, but if you want to skip ahead to the review, please skip in the video. So what is a freaking blonde Doppelbock? Almost all the Doppelbocks you'll be familiar with are going to be darker Doppelbocks. Paulaner makes one, Trogs makes one, a bunch of breweries make one. The commercial examples for pale Doppelbock are actually not that around. I personally don't believe I've actually had a pale Doppelbock before, and this is, after like 3,500 beers. And so, by the way, it's called Helle, where people might be familiar with Helles for meaning pale. German has masculine, feminine, and gender neutral, so instead of Helles, it's Heller Doppelbock, so pale Doppelbock. So obviously it's a paler Doppelbock. They're using Pilsner and Vienna malt instead of those really rich, darker Munich malts and some Carafa in there to really make a darker Doppelbock. It's pretty much a Doppelbock in ABV. This one comes in at 9.2%, but it is what it is. It's pale. And also, it sits in bourbon barrels for 3 months, which is pretty interesting because it's a little bit different from their Bourbon County series where they have the beer sit there for a year, and then some of the other beers they let sit even longer. So beer comes in a really nice color. Comes in like a nice kind of copper, kind of like a light amber kind of color. Definitely a little past deep gold, so like, pale amber kind of color. Let's get the aroma on this one. Yeah. It just smells like beautiful biscuits, like really nice and sweet and rich, even leaning towards a little bit of this kind of like sweetness of caramel and butterscotch. I will say it's a sort of a tricky kind of note in there to really define where you get pure diacetyl, which is like buttery popcorn, whereas you get really rich depth of malt and it really just smells like caramel and butterscotch and buttery biscuits. So it's like a really dance between trying to figure out those as well, because caramel, butterscotch, and these buttered biscuits do actually have butter in them, but ideally you're actually getting depth of malt and not diacetyl, which is a flaw. It just smells really nice and rich and deep, but not really those kind of like rich chocolatey and dark fruit notes, really just riding on that kind of like pale biscuit and caramelly kind of note. Cheers. Wow, very nice. This beer is dangerous, I'm telling you. First off, you really don't taste that much bourbon. It really doesn't taste like there's a smack of bourbon up front. With 3 months of aging, you'd think that there'd be a decent extraction and then just get like a really nice hot beer on your palate. Really, if I had to guess, there was no bourbon quality in this beer, but there's a little bit of like a tannic note drying out the beer on the finish, so it's actually pretty nice. It dries out the beer along with that really beautiful attenuated lager finish, so it's nice and clean on the finish, along with that kind of complexity of the tannic oak on the finish. But in general, up front, this is Doppelbock. This is rich depth of just malt for days. It's driving all over the place. It has a really beautiful German complexity of malt, and if you know those richer malt-forward German beers that I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about with Weizenbock and Doppelbock, even the darker ones. This one just really rides on rich, hearty bread, maybe a little bit of bread crust, biscuits for days, a little bit of this kind of dancing caramelly note in there. Maybe a hint of like cooked fruits, pears, apples. Think of your pies, pie crust dancing around in there. There's a really nice depth of Doppelbock flavor without the huge, strong hit of depth or darker depth, leaning towards dark fruits, raisins, not those. But it really has a beautiful complexity of malt here. That lager finish along with the oak makes this beer super dangerous. It draws me to a world of like Belgian triple and Belgian golden strong ales, where beers can be really dangerous at 9.2%. As I drink it more, there's maybe a pop of bourbon quality and heat up front. But boy, this is a really nice, well-constructed beer. Very much liking it. It very much tastes like fantastic German brewing tradition. So as for rating, let's go with this is delicious. Just clean, simple, malty, and dangerous. And then I love that tannic structure on the back end. Let's go with 95 on this one. This is absolutely delicious. Thank you so much, Kat. This is Goose Island Cooper Project Barrel Aged Blonde Doppelbock. Until next time, guys. Cheers. Later.